and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are absolutely buzzing to talk about everything, pretty much Gold Cup this episode. We are excited to talk about the internationals that are still going on in North America, and the 4 quarterfinals happened, and they were half spicy, half quite boring. But we will cut out the boring detail.
Yeah, so we're going to do Gold Cup and a little bit of WSL at the end. Let's be honest, it wasn't the most exciting weekend of WSL. But we're still gonna cover it because it still deserves to be covered, boring games or not. But if you're listening to this on Wednesday, we dropped a full quarterfinal Gold Cup episode special yesterday, Tuesday. That has a breakdown with Amy of all of the games, all 4 matches, because honestly, we wanted to give you time to digest it before the semis, and it was just too much to pack in here because we've already got a jam-packed episode for you without even the full game chat. But we are going to throw in, of course, the USA versus Colombia, the spiciest of them all. Of course, we're going to talk about that in here. So, let's go.
So, before we talk about anything like match-related and getting into all of the quarterfinal realness, we have to talk about the drama that happened just before the quarterfinals. So if anybody doesn't know, there was a big thing between Costa Rica and Puerto Rico because the way the Gold Cup worked, as we mentioned last week, was there were 3 groups, and it was the top 2 of each group and then the top 3rd place person twice. So the 2 top place 3rd people would get through to make the quarters. Close enough.
Yeah, so there, unfortunately, only 1 third place team missed out in entering the knockout rounds. 2 out of 3 made it. And what happened, Allie? Lo and behold, in the final game, go for it.
So lo and behold, fun thing. So it's Costa Rica, Puerto Rico are the final 2 that are going to battle it out for who's going to get this final place. And they are equal on everything. They are equal on points. They are equal on goals scored, goals against, yellow cards, red cards, absolutely everything that they criteria like they have of how to judge these teams against each other. They are equal on. So what the tournament did was they did a draw. Basically, they eeny, meeny, miny, moed it to see who was going to get it.
It was down to pure luck. I mean, first of all, the fact that this happened, group stage match day 3 of 3, and Puerto Rico loses to Colombia 2-0. And then literally anything but a 3-0 loss or win for Canada over Costa Rica would result in no tie break. We just, okay, we'll go to a tie break. They're even on points, but this team has more goals for, or this team has more goals against. And what happens? A 3-0 win for Canada over Costa Rica. It's truly wild if you look at it. And it's just, okay, even on wins, even on draws, even on losses, even on goals for, goals against, goal differential, points, everything. I mean, the news that this made, and my favorite thing about this is everybody, for those of you not in CONCACAF region, there's a saying I'm going to bring you into the fold of. It's called, that was so CONCACAF. And the fact that this resulted, we are deciding who advances to the knockout stages, Costa Rica or Puerto Rico, over a draw of the hat, like pure luck. And they tried to make it look all fancy with like plastic soccer balls and like no, this is, you write a name on a piece of paper, you put it in a hat. That's what this is. And it was just so CONCACAF that this is how it ended up being. But the point is that it did upset a lot of people because, listen, I'm not saying one team deserves to go over the other. Absolutely not. But to go out of the tournament, to not advance in this manner, it's so devastating. At the end of the day, Costa Rica's name ends up getting pulled, and poor Puerto Rico, who honestly have been kind of like the tournament darlings in a way. My thoughts go out to Puerto Rico fans and the team because, I mean, just a devastating way to go out. And especially everybody really did enjoy watching their young goalkeeper, Sydney Martinez, 24-year-old who plays her club football in Norway. She's been putting on an absolute show. And I know a lot of people were disappointed, not just to see Puerto Rico go out, but really like with the manner in which this happened, which leads us on to discussing, look, I've got to be honest. When this happened, I was like, Yeah, that's terrible. And that's very CONCACAF. And I also can't think of a better way.
I was raging. I was absolutely raging on behalf of Puerto Rico because it's so stupid. It's so stupid that it's just literally, like I said, they eeny, meeny, miny, mowed it and went, there you go, they get it, because that's just the way it landed.
Yeah, so let me ask you then, Allie, if it enraged you, let me ask you this question, because I think this came up a lot in people's conversations about it. Is this the best way to tie break something where all of the previous tie breaks are locked even? And if not, what is the best way to maybe go about this in the future?
So I said that my thought was that you have them play each other, and you can either do it as a full match, which would be a lot of work on their bodies because it's an extra 90, maybe 120 minutes. You do it as golden goal, so like the first one to score, that's it, because that's how we used to decide cup matches over here, was golden goal, first team to score in extra time, that was theirs. Or even a penalty shootout would have been fairer, because then each team is in control of their own destiny, and you wouldn't even have to time it for fans to turn up. Like, it wouldn't have to be a big match as such. You could literally do it that it's behind closed doors between the two teams, as they're in the same area, they're in the same.
They better not do that behind closed doors. If there's a penalty shootout, I would like to be watching it. Thank you very much.
They could televise it, but they don't need to. Basically, they don't need to be like, oh, we need to make sure that fans could get there. They could do it at like 9 o'clock in the morning or something. But there were ways they could have done it where the teams were more in control of their own destiny. I think that's what makes it the fairer.
An interesting suggestion. I'm really not for another head-to-head game.
Yeah.
It's just too much wear and tear on players' bodies. And I mean, frankly, even a penalty shootout, when you think about, okay, you got to warm up, you got to do this, that's a lot too. But at least it's less than a game. Yeah, I was trying to think through other tiebreakers. I'm like, okay, is it fair to go to maybe their previous head-to-head, even though it wasn't within the Gold Cup? When was the last time Costa Rica and Puerto Rico played each other? Okay, but that's not really fair because it's not the same squad and it's not within the tournament. It's a toughie.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but at the end of the day, we're going to talk about the quarterfinals. Costa Rica lost to Canada. They put up a really good fight. But I do believe that either of these teams, I didn't see either of them going all the way to the final. Now, does that make a difference? No. Like, should that have an impact on this? No.
I was going to say, do you think that that is just what they do? Because say, for example, worst came to absolute worst, the US and Canada ended up in that position where they are equal on everything, and one of them has to go out. Do you think they would have let it go down to just a draw if that's what they do? It would be interesting. Yeah, I mean, interested.
It was literally written into the rules. Like, this is per the rules of the tournament. This wasn't just somebody sitting in a room being like, I don't know, I guess we'll just like draw a name out of a hat. These were written laws that I'm sure somebody was like, well, the odds are so slim that two teams would be drawn on all of these statistics on wins, draws, losses, goals for, like, go on and on and on, and they're still drawn. No, there's no chance. So we'll just say, if that happens, which it probably won't, we'll pull a name out of a hat. Like, I can just see it happening there. But either way, I mean, like I said, Costa Rica put up a wonderful fight. Frankly, almost beat Canada, could have beat Canada. And I think it would have been a very similar game had Puerto Rico been in. But just wild. Hashtag CONCACAF. Am I right?
Yep.
Now, let's get into the games. As we mentioned, the 4 quarterfinals happened on Sunday with 4 matchups. Today, when this episode is dropping, Wednesday, the semifinals are being played. And right now, we're going to talk semifinal matchup previews and predictions. But before we do, we want to cover some of the quarters, and specifically the spiciest matchup of all was the USA versus Colombia. And Allie, you can attest to this, because I'm not just saying this because I love the US Women's National Team. This was by far and away, and by all accounts, the spiciest matchup of the quarters. Am I right?
For sure. It was crazy. And like, I didn't watch it live because it was on at a stupid o'clock time in the UK, and I woke up to my social media exploding with everything that had happened.
Was your social media exploding with anything game related, or was it all off the ball, little tussles that happened.
Do you know what? I would say that 9 out of 10 social media remarks I saw was the off the ball stuff, and then there was one, I would say, that was actually about the gameplay and about how good Alex Morgan had been.
Yeah, well,
but that was it. Everything else was about like how Trinity Rodman was calming everybody down and trying to like...
It's music to my ears, because now that's two English people that I know that have today told me how well Alex Morgan played, and really just...
Did I say I thought that? No. Did I say that I read it online? Yes, those are two very different things.
Take it for what it is, though, my friend. And I'm glad you mentioned this, because we get into that on this chat with Amy that we're about to jump into. Amy joined me right after these quarterfinals to break down all 4 of the quarterfinals, and we released a special yesterday that was almost an hour-long breaking down all 4 games. So if you want to jump into all 4 games, head over to that, and we're going to grab the USA-Colombia chat from that special, and we're going to drop it in here so you can hear that whole conversation around the game, the antics, and really our breakdown of both sides of the ball. USA took on Colombia in what I think was the most anticipated quarterfinal. The USA took down Colombia 3-0. There's so much to say about this game. We could do an entire episode just on this game alone. I don't even know where I want to start here. I think maybe it's not even game specific. I have to just say I was appalled at how out of hand this game got. And quite honestly, I hate talking about the refs. I hate spending a moment on it, but we have to, because my biggest takeaway from this game, sadly, wasn't how much I enjoyed seeing the U.S. play, frankly, some of their best football that they've played in the past 4 years, but that actually this game became completely unenjoyable to me, because I was biting my nails just hoping that nobody had to get carted off of this field with a massive concussion or something else. And if that's the storyline for me coming out of this game, something really is wrong with how this game was managed and controlled by the referees. And it was right from the jump, from minute 0.
I totally agree with everything you just said there. I think it was terribly controlled by the referee. I think that they needed to step on the game quicker. There needed to be yellow cards produced earlier in the game to stop that from happening. There wasn't. I mean, we look at the penalty, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but we look at the penalty and how long it took for the penalty to actually get taken. And then once the ball's put down on the spot, the Colombian player comes back into the area. It's like big gamesmanship. That's a yellow card. You need to produce a yellow card, because now the ball's on the spot, everybody else is out. That's time wasting, and also it's encroachment. You need to book that player.
100%. That was Carolina Arias, by the way, who was causing, in my opinion, a lot of problems across the board on the field. But I have to say, and you can check me on this, Amy, if this is my U.S. bias, I was kind of appalled at how Colombia handled themselves. I lost a little bit of respect for them in how much they were flopping, rolling around on the field, the antics that they had on display, as you just mentioned, during the penalty kick, and just frankly, how heavily they leaned into the dirty play of it. It's fine to be physical. Go be physical. That's fine. But for me, we've talked about how Colombia in big games, they lose their head. They lost their head against England in the World Cup. I mentioned that last week. They've lost their heads against Brazil already in the group stages when they played Brazil, and they lean into the physicality of it. And that's exactly what we saw here, and we saw it early on. And granted, these two teams, they don't like each other. They've got a history of it. But I'm so sorry to say, and tell me if it just sounds like I'm being bitter, but I feel like they were young, and they played like they were young.
I don't think you're wrong at all. And as somebody who doesn't particularly enjoy watching the US win, I said to my group of friends that Colombia's antics were making me want the US to win. So that's how bad it was. I watched the Brazil-Colombia game in the group stage, and my exact thoughts were, Colombia are anti-football. They're not playing football. They're not trying to play football. Yesterday, they weren't trying to play football either. What they're trying to do is any gamesmanship tactics, anything aggressive, to put the USA off, to try and level the playing field. Because at the end of the day, there is a huge difference between the two squads, right? The talent levels and the capabilities. But you're doing yourself a huge disservice on the world stage, because people are now looking at you, rolling around on the floor. I think there was one example where Alex Morgan stepped on Arias' foot.
Gosh.
And it was embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I lost a lot of respect for Colombia there, because the respect they gained as the darlings of the World Cup is going out the window now because of the way they're playing in this tournament. we're not even talking about Caicedo. I don't
No.
think we've mentioned Linda Caicedo this whole tournament because they're
Nope.
not playing football. They're not giving her the opportunity to do anything because half the game is spent with their players rolling around on the floor, trying to get players sent off, trying to get players yellow carded.
Yep.
And I don't understand what the rules are anymore of the game because in the WSL and in the Premier League, the men's Premier League in England, anytime somebody calls for a yellow card who flashes their hand up in the air and asks for a yellow from another team is immediately booked for that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be happening in this tournament. And it confuses me because, again, if Colombia is continually asking for yellow cards, those players should also be yellow carded.
It bums me out that this is what we have to focus on. And that was my overall takeaway after that game was I'm so upset that I didn't even really enjoy watching that game because of all of these extra things that we're talking about. And we can get into the details of, this person should have had a yellow, this person should have had a red, so on and so forth. And we could spend all day doing it because there were so many missed calls. It's just across the board, honestly. But in the moments we have, let's talk about both these teams and let's talk about this game specifically. The US coming off of a really big loss to Mexico coming into this game. I think everybody was like, okay, this is the moment. What are we going to see from the United States? Are we going to see a US that honestly collapses, or are we going to see a US that comes back fighting? And if you thought that they were going to collapse, you don't know this team because this is where my love is going to start shining through as Amy rolls her eyes. Let's talk about this because I don't even know where to begin with the US. Perhaps I don't even know where to begin with the US.
Let's start with the back four because I want to talk about the back four
Okay.
because everyone's gonna talk about the 3 goals and okay, we'll get onto
No,
that.
I
But
didn't actually want to talk about the goals at all. I just want to talk
well,
about
I mean
personnel.
right, okay, so let's talk about personnel. Let's talk about the back four, but let's also talk about Alyssa Nair because I have said this to you and nobody has like
Oh, good.
validated
This is
me.
gonna be
Alyssa
your
Nair
this is gonna be
has
your I'm
been
right moment, Amy, and then I'm gonna have my I'm right moment. Okay,
okay,
so go
great.
for it.
Okay, so Alyssa Nair has never been my favorite goalkeeper. I'll admit that, hands up, and I've criticised her when she's needed to be criticised. But Alyssa Nair has been the US's best player for probably the last 2 years, and nobody is coming out and saying it, and I don't know why. Why is nobody saying Alyssa Nair has been the best player for 2 years? What's going on here? Because you're looking for people, you're looking for leaders. Alyssa Nair, I know she's not vocal, that's not her game, but look at what she did yesterday. She kept the US in the game.
Yeah.
Two unreal saves. And
Ridiculous
against
saves.
against Mexico, it could have been way worse than it was if it
Yeah.
wasn't for Alyssa Nair.
Mhm.
So I think that we have to talk about Alyssa Nair. She's in what, she's 36, is she? I think.
I think she's 35 or 36, yeah.
35, 36. This is her 100th cap for the US, which seems crazy that she's been playing for so long. She only had 100 caps, but flawless performance. Technically outstanding. The saves that she made, especially the one where she had to react quickly to that first time shot where it comes across the box and she dives down to her left. That is a world class save.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Big time.
Alyssa Nair, hats off to you.
Fantastic. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And now my moment for my
Go
I'm
ahead.
right. And if you listen to last week's podcast, you heard me say it. The back four of Naomi Girma and Tierna Davidson holding down the center, Jenna Neiswanger and Emily Fox on the outside is our strongest back four right now for so many reasons that, again, I said it must have been a good episode last week. I said so much good stuff. I keep referencing it. All right. Let's say it quickly here. On the outside, you have the young Emily Fox and the young Jenna Neiswanger. Jenna Neiswanger, for those who don't know, she played forward her whole life. She played that attacking wing position. She was converted to an outside back by Juan Carlos Amaros, her head coach at Gotham FC. And you know what? Thank God that happened because I think right now we've got one of the best left backs in the world developing in Jenna Neiswanger. Absolutely incredible talent. And what these two provide, aside from, frankly, very strong defense and the way Emily Fox was able to read some of the attack that Colombia was orchestrating was just mind-boggling to me. But the way they can step up, the way they get forward, that's what the U.S. need. They need their width. They need their attacking presence. And that's exactly what happened in this game. And then in the center, Naomi Girma and Tierna Davidson, not only are they fantastic center backs, and Naomi Girma is one of, if not already, the best center back in the world. Not the best, one of the best center backs in the world, I'll say.
Calm down. take it down a level.
I do need to future captain of the U.S. women's national team for sure. I said last week, and I'll say it again, and we saw it in this game, what they provide, another element of their game is their distribution out of the back. And I would love to continue to see these back four gel together. And let me continue on my I'm right soapbox by adding that in the midfield, Corbin Albert, we hadn't seen her a lot, and this is a very young player. She's 20 years old. We haven't seen her a lot in this country because she plays in France. And
Yeah, PSG.
and we didn't know how she was going to perform. And she has been one of the key midfielders for the US in this tournament. And I think that without her in the midfield here, this game would have been very different.
I like Fox and Nicewonga provide a nice balance at the back because you have a left-footed player playing left back, who she scored, right? She came forward and she scored with her left foot. Unreal finish.
Oh my God.
And we've been watching her for Gotham this season doing the same thing. So this is not a surprise to me. And also the Davidson Nicewonga combination on that side is exciting for Gotham. And then on the other side, Emily Fox, who we talked about Linda Caicedo before this whole talk about the US. Linda Caicedo barely did anything. She had one nice ball over the top in behind Nicewonga early on, which could have changed the game if Colombia had scored there. But other than that, we have to say that Fox, Germer on that side kept Caicedo real quiet, and we didn't see the best of Linda Caicedo this tournament. I'm going to say that, but
no, we didn't.
And then Corbin Albert coming in, and again, like you said, we don't really know too much about her because I don't watch a lot of the French league. I will watch the bigger games, the OL and PSG or those types of games. I will watch the highlights of because I think that they're really good games. But she's definitely come in and made a case for herself to start in that position. I still don't think Lindsay Horan is the answer, but she's the captain of this squad, so there's not much I can say about that. They're not going to stop playing Lindsay Horan, but I was saying Jaden Shaw needed to start, and Jaden Shaw started and again scored, and I think was his 4 goals in 4 games for her or something like that, something ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think she's had 4 goals in 7 appearances.
That's an insane stat for how young she is.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to talk about is Alex Morgan. So
good, because that's exactly
Morgan,
what I was about to say. And I'm so excited to talk about Alex Morgan. Let's do it, Amy. Go on.
Okay, so
express
Alex
your
Morgan,
love for how Alex Morgan played in this game because it's got to be nothing but positive. And it's gonna make my ears sing to hear you say this.
Does make my ears bleed to hear it, but I mean, obviously we know Alex Morgan is probably in the top 3 strikers in the world, right? But just of her game and how we know she's played before, she's, as the commentators kept mentioning time and time again, she's 34 years old now. She's had to adapt and change the way she plays a little bit because when you get older, you do have to change your style of play, right? You can't be that dynamic player running in behind all the time or just purely ghosting people for speed. That's not who you are anymore. You're also more rounded as a footballer, right? The more experience you get at different levels and different clubs and international football, you become a different player. You become, more mature. So what we're seeing is a mature Alex Morgan now. And I think that this is what the US needed, right? So we keep talking about this US dynamic front line, but they don't work. It doesn't work. It kind of just, I don't know. There's been games where it's just like, well, this doesn't work for me. And I think that they needed Alex Morgan to come into this game specifically and be this, and for lack of better person to name in the women's game, Harry Kane. She's their Harry Kane. And what she does is she brings leadership. She brings she brings a maturity, but she also brings this, I can play passes too in behind, and I can be the player who flicks balls on, like we saw the Nicewonga goal where she just she didn't flick it, but she got in the way of the player and it sort of like diverted off of their head and fell to Nicewonga. But she still can be direct and she can cause problems in behind. And what I think she does is she brings that front line together and she's the glue that was holding them together as a front 3. And obviously you're loving this.
I'm absolutely loving it, and I've also got more to add. I'm just loving this. Listen, I'm not going to make it a big thing. For a moment, I was going to make it a big thing for all of the people who have always thought that Alex Morgan was overrated. But here's what I'm going to say. First of all, I think we need to start calling her Mama Morgan now because
that's gross. I've never called her that.
She was just in so many ways, she was the presence that the US needed. And I'll get on to tactically, but I have to start with emotionally as well, because this was a fiery game. This was a game that the US could have very easily lost their heads. And specifically, Alex Morgan could have lost her head because she was getting absolutely trampled upon, just people sticking in from the back into her heels. And I mean, somebody absolutely could have gotten hurt in this game. And Alex Morgan kept her head about her. You could tell that everybody was taking a cue from her because she was the one who was getting, honestly, probably beaten up the most. And for her to do that, and we talked about the penalty kick and the antics that Colombia had. Alex Morgan stood on the spot with the ball, knowing she wasn't going to take the penalty kick. She stood on the spot with the ball and just stood there to allow Lindsey Horan not have to be at the spot. Lindsey, go do whatever you need to do mentally. I'm going to stand here with the ball. I'm going to make sure Colombia doesn't, mess with the field around here. And I'm just going to stand here until everything's done. In so many ways, emotionally, she's the glue that was needed in this squad. That honestly, it's what the captain's supposed to be doing. And she still, in many ways, is that captain. She was 2019 captain, and she still kind of has that, whether even though she wasn't brought into this squad initially, she came in because Mia Official tore her ACL. She really is still an emotional captain. Now, tactically, the thing I've always given Alex Morgan credit for that I think is a part of her game that she doesn't get enough credit for is her hold-up play. And that is, I think, what changed the game in this win for the United States.
Yeah, she's able to hold the ball up and bring people into play, and that's what I was just kind of making the point about the dynamic front line is that
Yeah,
they don't necessarily hold the ball up very well or bring other
right.
people into play. So it kind of then just becomes them running at people, and that sometimes it works, but it hasn't been super successful for the US, I would say, so far. And maybe they need to figure out in certain games, like, okay, that is the tactic we can use. But in other games, that's not the tactic we can
Mhm.
use. And also, I think what Morgan's done is, I don't know if she was in Emma Hayes's plans moving forward. Who knows? We don't know
She is
that.
now.
She is now. Of course she is. She said to Emma Hayes, right, I'm still here. I'm still here. And you need me.
Yep.
And that's what she did in this game. She was a leader, like you said, and that maturity shone through. And I
Mama
think that,
Morgan.
God, do we have to call her that? um, she's gonna, if she ever listens to this podcast, she's gonna hate that.
I think she'll like
But
it.
I think that Emma Hayes has now got another dynamic that
Yeah, it's
she
another
can look at.
element.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Look, anybody, not anybody. I'm going to just keep referencing the 2019 squad because that's a squad that won the World Cup. When you look at all of the different lineups, there wasn't a starting 11 that played every single game. What Jill Ellis had is players that could slot in different elements and change the way the team was going to play within this structure that she had created, depending on the opponent. And that's a different element that Alex Morgan now provides. And I agree. I think she's completely played her way into Emma Hayes' plans, and it's absolutely beautiful to see. I think it's interesting while we're touching on the number 9 position that it's very clear that Emma Hayes does like Sophia Smith more as that number 9 and that point player more so than on the wing. I actually prefer Smith on the wing, and especially when you're getting more width from your outside backs, allowing Smith to kind of pinch in a little bit and dribble at players. I would have liked to see that. I wished, honestly, that she'd come in for Rodman a little bit earlier in the game.
But then that poses a problem. Like, who does she play at 9 if Morgan's injured or unavailable?
Well,
Because
I
there
think she
isn't
could be
really.
both, really. Like I like your
Yeah,
idea of the dynamic element and switching off. Do you want Morgan? Do you want Smith at the 9? I think it's weird that we've only seen Smith at the 9. That's the only position we've really seen her in this tournament, and I'd like to see her more on the wing because she can do both.
yeah. I'm yet to be sold on anyone else at the 9 except for Alex Morgan at this point. So
Yeah.
that's saying something about the other players. I mean, I really like Jaden Shaw, and I don't know if she's
Oh.
going to be the 9, if she could play the
No,
9.
really, just stay. Just she should just stay exactly where she is. Do exactly what she's doing. Just stay right
I,
there.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. She's doing what she's doing and she's scoring the goals. But also, I really like Olivia Moultrie, and I really want to see more of her. I mean, this may not have been the game for her, but she came on. She had a chance. She should have scored. But
I
I
thought she
think
was
she's
playing
another.
far too slow for this game. When she came on, she was just holding the ball up at her feet far too much.
Well, she's coming into the game, and this game was chaotic, right? So
Yeah.
I think it was a lot to ask of a young player getting thrown into this. But from what I saw of her in the opening game, I liked what she had to offer. So I wanted to see a little bit more of her, and she's got a long way to go to develop. She's young too. So I don't think we're going to see too much of her for the rest of the tournament. But somebody who I'd like to see more of would be her.
All right, let's get on to Colombia. I think we touched on a lot of it in the higher picture of Colombia in that, what I said, that they're too talented and they're too gifted to be focusing on this physicality element of the game. And that's my big picture takeaway for Colombia. But let's get a little bit into the game and what they've been doing here. And I know specifically you really want to touch on a really big absence in the front line of the Colombia attack, which is Myra Ramirez, who has stayed with Chelsea, and we haven't seen her in this tournament. And it's very clear that Colombia are missing her big time.
Yeah, she was the standout player of. I mean, but we talk about Linda Caicedo, but I think Myra Ramirez was actually the standout player for Colombia of the World Cup. Just her ability to hold the ball up, to run into the channels, to cause problems, score goals. We're seeing that for Chelsea now, and for me, it's a little disappointing that she wasn't able to be at this tournament. I do understand why she wasn't at this tournament. I mean, I think the loophole that Chelsea exploited with Colombia not being a CONCACAF team, so that she would have to come back after the group stages, which is understandable because Chelsea do not have a striker right now that they can rely on except for Myra Ramirez. They have obviously Kerr and Fischl with ACL tears. So I think for me, on a personal level, and for those watching this tournament, it was disappointing that Myra Ramirez wasn't in the Colombia team. And for her personally, I don't know how she feels about it because I know that she's very proud to play for Colombia, and I think she's probably torn in two different directions because she just signed for Chelsea and she wants to prove herself to be one of the world's best strikers. But do you want to explain the loophole, Sarah? Because you seem to have a good hold on this.
Sure. So I'll try to do it shortly and simply. Essentially, this tournament is run by CONCACAF, which is the North American governing body. And the South American teams that are in this tournament in Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina are not part of CONCACAF. They have their own governing body under FIFA. And so per the rules, players are only required to be on international duty within the normal FIFA window, which is the window that all of the European players and teams were playing in. So that was, I don't have it up, but I believe it was 9 days. And so the loophole that Chelsea exploited was that because Colombia are not a part of CONCACAF, all of their players technically can go back to their club team at the end of the international window. So Chelsea essentially said that, hey, if she goes, we're going to recall her on February 28th, which is the end of the international window, which would have meant that she would have been a part of the Colombian team for the first few group games. And then should Colombia have made the knockout stages, which they did, she would have had to leave. So essentially what Emma Hayes did is make a deal with Colombia and say, hey, we're going to recall her. So I think it's best for you that you just, have your team for the tournament and not call her in, because that's a spot that's not going to exist if you make the knockout stages. Everybody else that's playing on Colombia, Brazil, at this point, for all 4 of those teams, if they're still in the tournament, they're there because their club and their country have had a mutual understanding that even though the FIFA window has closed, they're going to stay for this entire tournament. And that's clearly not what happened with Chelsea and Colombia.
Do we think Emma Hayes was playing playing a little bit two ways?
Did she want the US to win?
Yeah, exactly. Did she just say, like, let's keep Myra Ramirez here so the US can win this competition?
That's really funny.
I was disappointed that Myra Ramirez wasn't there, because I think that with Myra Ramirez, Colombia offers something different, and maybe they wouldn't have been so hell bent on going out with these tactics to just kind of anti-football, break up the game, be aggressive, and that we may have seen something a football team out there as opposed to a rugby side, which is what we saw for most of this tournament, I would say.
Yeah.
So all in all, very disappointed with Colombia. Not the results, but just the way they played.
I think what I'm most disappointed in is, this is a new head coach since the World Cup, and I don't like the direction that we're headed in with this new head coach. It's clear that the focus on tactics isn't there, and the ability to help your team control their emotions and be on the field in these big games and those learning opportunities, it's not there. And for a team, like I said, I'll be a broken record, with so much talent, with so much potential, that's what's most disappointing about this. It essentially felt like this team turned into a 2-player threat, right? They were like, we have Linda Caicedo and we have Uzme, and those 2 players are going to orchestrate the attack. Well, you've got talent across the entire field, and you don't have to focus on those 2 players. You don't have to focus on the physicality of it. And yeah, I'm very disappointed in Colombia in this entire tournament, and I really hope that this is not the direction that they head in. But we can't leave the Gold Cup conversation without previewing the 2 semifinals that are happening today, Wednesday, when this episode is dropping. So I sincerely hope you're listening to this on Wednesday, but don't tune it off. Don't turn it off if you're listening after Wednesday, because hey, you can hear if we were right and you can hear if we were wrong. And either way, I think is pretty fun. So let's do it. We have 2 semifinals, Brazil versus Mexico. That'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Canada versus the USA. That'll be at 10 p.m. Eastern. So let's go chronologically, Allie. Brazil versus Mexico. Let's do a preview of this game before we dive into the predictions.
Yeah, I have to say, this is probably the one I'm more excited about, just because I love how these 2 teams play, and I'm really excited to see how they play against each other. To be honest, I think we bigged up Mexico last week, and we talked about how amazing it was to see how building the league has turned into their national team being something special. Brazil is always fun to watch. I have found we saw that in the World Cup, and we've seen that previously, and they've got some insane players. So how these 2 are going to work against each other, I'm excited. This is the one that I am going to stay up for.
Arguably, weirdly, I kind of agree. Like, honestly, both of these matchups are so much fun because the USA and Canada know each other so well, and they can't stand each other, and that always makes it fun too. But the explosiveness that I feel like might arise from this Brazil-Mexico game, I mean, this could be like a 1-0 or it could be like a 4-3, you know? And I'm so excited for it because both of these teams, especially Mexico, are emerging as a stronger side than I think any of us anticipated before this tournament really started. And specifically, we talked a lot about Brazil in the last episode, so I'm not going to really dive into the behind the scenes and the like history of that. But I'm excited to see how Mexico's high press comes up against Brazil, and that's on both sides of the ball. So Mexico, I think, could be the most explosive offense that Brazil has faced to date in this tournament. And Brazil have dominated possession in all games that they've played so far, but how are they going to fare against Mexico's high press that truly will look to take the ball off of them the moment they get it? So I think a lot of teams that Brazil have played might have been comfortable to sit back and let them have that ball. And Mexico certainly are not going to do that, and I'm excited to see how that might play out on the field.
See, that's why I think this game is going to be high scoring. I think it is going to be like a 4-3 type game because nobody's going to sit back. Nobody is going to be, waiting around in the midfield. Both are going to go for it and they're going to go hard. But then that leaves their defenses vulnerable. So that's why I think it's going to be a high scoring game because I think it's going to be quite end to end and, smashing time.
Interesting.
I'm just excited.
Give me the prediction. That sounded like a lead up to a prediction.
Lead up prediction, I'm going to give it to Mexico, and I'm going to say it's going to probably, I'd say 4-3 maybe, 3-2.
Wow. They're going with the upset, everybody. They're going with the upset. I think the complete opposite, actually. I think as strong as both of these teams have been offensively, I think the headline for both of these teams is their defense. Brazil has been absolutely locked down defense. They've let in 1 goal all tournament, and that was in the quarterfinals. They let in 0 goals across the entirety of the group stage. And Mexico, I just talked about their high press. So defensively, I think these teams are both very sound. I think it'll be 2-1 Brazil. I think Brazil will take it. I think Mexico will. We will tip our hats to them for a wonderful tournament, and Brazil will advance to the final. Do you want to take us on to number 2?
Let's talk about the less exciting one.
Watch your tongue there.
No.
I really don't think that this is that much less exciting. This is going to be a blast. And we already just said it. These teams, they know each other very, very well.
See, I don't because I genuinely don't think this game. Because I watched...
Well, then you can go to sleep and I'm going to watch it.
I am going to go to sleep. No, but I watched the quarterfinal between Canada and Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And
something to be desired. It certainly
Yeah,
left something
it was.
to be desired if you're a
And I'm
Canada
like,
fan.
how did you beat them 3-0 the first time? I don't think Costa Rica got that much better. So Canada was
And
painful
if you're
to watch.
wondering, you can tune in. If you're listening and you're wondering, you can tune into yesterday's quarterfinal special with Amy O'Connor, because I and Amy cover all of that in that episode.
Smooth. I've seen the US game and they were great against Colombia. They were, but we saw what they were like against Mexico. And in their group stages, to be fair, they didn't have the most cohesiveness in their group stage games. So it is all dependent on who turns up. And if the best of the best turn up, then yeah, we're in for a great game. But I don't see that happening.
Oh, you don't? I was gonna say if both teams turn up at their best, but you just don't think that that's gonna happen.
No, I don't.
Okay, so who's gonna turn up?
I think the USA are going to turn up, if I'm honest. And that's painful for me to say. But I do think the US are going to turn up because they've got so much to prove. They have got so much to prove because at the moment, people are forgetting their history. They're ignoring that because they're just focusing on their year and a half, 2-year slump that they've had.
Well, I'll tell you one person that hasn't forgotten their history. She's sitting right here.
I know you haven't, but I'm just saying in general, the focus has been on, you're only as good as your last tournament, and we all know how that ended. So I think the US have got a hell of a lot to prove. They've got a lot to prove after that Colombia game because of how spicy and how messy it was, and how most of the talking points are about off-field and off-ball play than the actual play that happened. So, and I think Canada are done. I honestly think, based on the game that I saw...
Now, don't make the Canada fans turn off this episode.
I'm sorry, but I just don't think your team turned up, and I don't think they'll turn up again under the USA. I'm sorry, but I think we're going to see a USA-Mexico final.
Wow. I mean, that would be great for the tournament because it would be the rematch of all rematches. If there's a rematch I think that everybody wants to see in this tournament, that's it. And that would be a blast of a final. And let me tell you, I won't be upset if that's what happens. Listen, I agree with some things that you said. I think that there's a huge chip on the U.S. women's national team's shoulder. And I actually, where I disagree is I think that we saw that. And I think we saw them start to play really beautiful football and start to put some great passes and not be predictable and actually have, a scheme and tactics that they were executing. I thought that the best game of the tournament was this past game. And that's amid a game where Colombia were doing what they were doing. So I agree with you with some of that. In terms of Canada, they were so good in the group stages and they fell off so hard and they were so predictable in the quarterfinal that I totally agree that this is a matter of who turns up on the day. We've seen both teams at almost their best, and we've seen both teams really just with a blunder throughout this tournament. So it is a matter of which team is going to turn up. And the most important thing that I think I agree with you on is that I think the U.S. are going to take it. Now, am I biased? Yes. Am I betting with my heart? Yes. Is there still a twinge that is like, oh my gosh, what if they don't? Of course. But everybody listening, you had to know that I was going to pick the U.S. I'm so sorry I can't be unbiased right now, but I simply cannot.
Maybe I'm being biased because I want my defender back. Because Zadorsky is still out with Canada, so maybe I'm being biased because I want my defender back.
Well, possibly. All right. So, as we mentioned, 2 semifinals tonight, Wednesday night. Brazil versus Mexico, Canada versus USA. If you're listening outside of Wednesday and you haven't seen them, head to Paramount Plus. You can watch the match replays. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
Over to Australia, and Western United maintain their 4-point lead over the competition with a win over Canberra United. Melbourne City remains second despite their loss to Brisbane Roar, and a win keeps Sydney FC third.
And over to France. Lyon survive a scare from Dijon to win and remain top of the league. PSG are hot on their tails in second, and Paris FC are languishing in third, but have 2 games in hand after this week's postponement.
To Scotland, and all 3 of the top teams managed significant wins this weekend. Rangers hold on to the top spot 4 points clear. Both Celtic and Glasgow City are tied on 56 points. It's still anyone's game.
And finally, to Mexico, La Liga MX. It's 8 out of 8 for Tigres, who hold on to the top spot. Their nearest rivals don't play until later this week, but this team is getting harder and harder to catch.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, we're going to take you to the WSL. We did not forget about the WSL. This was the first weekend back from international break, and I kind of wish it made more of a splash. I'm not going to lie.
I don't know what more you want. What more do you want? Like, it was a crazy weekend.
Actually, that's fair. There's a lot to talk about here. I'm sad we're not going to spend too much time on it. I mean, Liverpool delivered an absolute smacking to Aston Villa at home, beating them 4-1. West Ham drew with United. That was at home for West Ham. Allie, you were there. And in the North London derby, Arsenal took down Tottenham, got a little bit of revenge for Tottenham beating them earlier in the season. Arsenal took it 1-0. I would say the predictable scorelines were Chelsea beating Leicester City 4-0, and then City beating Everton. But Everton did put up a fight. City won 2-1. And then the final game that I haven't mentioned is what we're about to come on to.
Yes, which was my game of the week, despite being very happy to get a point off of Man United. But my game of the week has to be Brighton versus Bristol City. This game ended in a 7-3 win for the Seagulls, cementing Bristol City's woes, let's be honest. But it was the manner that this was done. It was this wasn't just a drubbing from Brighton. This was a game of cat and mouse, and that was like this team would score a couple and then the other team would try and catch up, and then they would get further ahead, but then the other team would almost make it, and then the last 6 minutes was just insane. So yeah, this was a game. Which is what we say when we say that the WSL is starting to get a bit more unpredictable, and it's getting a bit more, I won't even say even, but it's just like anybody can do anything on any given day, and this game proves it.
The fact that Brighton scored 7 goals is wild. 7-3, you said Brighton won. This was at Bristol City. It makes me truly feel for Bristol City delivering or taking that smacking at home. And I think a couple things need to be said here. First and foremost, Brighton scored 7 goals on the day. And before that, they'd scored 13 goals across the entire season. That's a statistic in and of itself. And then with this loss, and honestly, with West Ham getting a point off of United, Bristol City are done. They sit 6 points behind West Ham, who are in 11th, and Bristol City sit in 12th with just 6 points total on the season. And I think if there was a dagger to be daggered, this was it.
Yeah, and I got a little heat for saying it, I think at the end of December, but I said if it comes down to goal difference, then West Ham will be safe and Bristol won't be. And it's for results like this, and also Bristol have conceded 12 more goals than their next rival, which was Brighton, funny enough, in the fact that they can score goals, but they're defensively weak. And even their manager came out and said that after the result on Sunday, that they couldn't even get the basics right. And that's why they ended up conceding 7 goals.
It's such a shame. I really hate to see a team come up and immediately go right down. And I know we're talking about them like this is the end of the season, but I mean, we're just going to be having this same conversation, quite frankly, in 5 weeks or so when this truly concludes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I honestly did think maybe they could take it to the final day. It was looking like that, it could be, but let's talk about this game, because to be honest, as much as if it's a heartbreak for Bristol City, it is actually a fantastic boost for Brighton, who were getting dragged into that relegation battle. They'd fired their manager. They were on a downward spiral. As I said, they are the next team to have conceded the most goals other than Bristol. And then to come into this game and to, score 7, and it was by, I believe, 5 different goal scorers or 6 different goal scorers. This was a game. But Brighton fans, be ecstatic, because this was a game, and hopefully this is a turning point for your season.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that angle, because we had been talking about Brighton and we talked about the new manager, and the feeling around it really was like, this is not good for Brighton. And if they weren't going downhill already, they probably will start, because this is a bad sign. And then they come out and score 7 goals. So let's talk about Brighton and let's talk about this game. You want to go chronologically, Allie? I just want to hear what you have to say about Brighton and like what you're seeing from them that you weren't seeing before.
So it seemed that like they in the summer they had picked up some insane talent, and we were very excited. We'd seen that they picked up, Vicky Losada. They had picked up Maria Tatier from United, and we were excited, but they did still feel like 11 individual players, not a team, and that had been their detriment. Like they'd sort of done all right, and then they came crashing down, and then they got rid of their manager, and they kept falling. This is the first performance I've seen from Brighton where they are a team. They are communicating. You see it from the very back line to and with Bagley to through the defense, through the midfield, and up front. The fact that they can get 7, 5, 6 different goal scorers. They're scoring from set pieces, which we haven't seen from them before. You're starting to see that the training ground stuff is working, and that's allowing them to, their goals were really quick. They were really like quick after each other. But yeah, so that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited to see the way the assists went. And Elizabeth Turlan is just on such a hot streak. She's got 2 goals this game, has scored for them in their last game, and is just being the player we thought she could be. And it's just coming together for them. And at the right time, because they were getting sucked into that hole of the relegation battle. And now they see there's a way out for them, I believe.
I love the mention of Elizabeth Turlan. We've talked about her before, but what a season she's having. I think the big question for Brighton now is they did this against Bristol City, so they did this against the bottom team in the league. Can they now turn around and next weekend they host Manchester City? Can they do this against one of the top teams in the league?
Do you know what? Manchester City's a funny one, because Brighton has been their bogey team for so many seasons, and they either smash them or Brighton get a cheeky goal against them and they lose. If they play the way they played against Bristol, then there's a good shot. There is a good shot that they will beat them, because they know how to exploit weaknesses and these set pieces. So you know what? If I reckon they could pull a cheeky draw off out of, Man City.
All right. And final question about this game. We've talked about Brighton, but we haven't touched on specifically about this game what Bristol City's downfall was. So what did you see from them there? And was it any different than what's been going on for the entirety of this season?
Do you know what? It is a little bit different, because like I said, it was the basics they were getting wrong. We've said it before that defensively they've been quite weak and they can score goals. And like when they got it to 4-3 with 16 minutes to go, I thought, do you know what? This is it. They're going to pull it back. They're going to get at least a point. I reckon they're going to score another goal and they'll get another point. And then last 7 minutes, they commit a really stupid foul, which gives Brighton a penalty, and they just collapse. They just collapse and they concede 3 goals in 7 minutes. And last weekend they lost 5-2, I think it was, to Leicester. And again, it's that collapse. And the problem is the collapse I'm seeing is more of a mental collapse now. I just think that they have only so much fight and then they're done. And their own manager has said, and I just want to pull up a quick quote from Lauren Smith, because I thought it was quite poignant what she said, because she said it was embarrassing. And she said, it's not even the amount of goals, it's the way we conceded them. The throw-ins and the corners that we are good at, it's like we're getting better at one thing and then forget how to do something else. What can you do then? The only way out is to prove to everybody wrong. It's a big challenge, a mountain, not one that's numerically impossible, but if we don't put 90 minutes in the tank defending, then it is numerically impossible.
Yeah, 3 goals in 7 minutes, especially when those 3 goals come in the 89th, 92nd, and 96th minute, literally the end of the game, can only be a mental collapse. And that is it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. Tune in next week because we will be covering the Gold Cup final that will happen on Sunday. And, of course, the FA Cup quarterfinals that are happening all weekend. A big episode next week. And, as always, head over to our Patreon because we've got a lot of good content dropping there weekly. And for us here at the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.